You just moved into a new apartment. The paint is fresh. The boxes are barely unpacked. And somehow, within a week, you're already scrolling listings again. Something in you is restless. You tell yourself it's the noisy neighbors, or the small kitchen, or the long commute. But the real answer is far stranger. It has almost nothing to do with the apartment. It has everything to do with a shell. Specifically, the shell on the back of a hermit crab. Hermit crabs don't grow their own armor. Their bodies are soft, curled, vulnerable, built to slide into someone else's discarded shell and call it home. A hermit crab spends its entire life moving from one shell to the next, never building, never settling, always upgrading, always at risk, always one bad decision away from disaster. And the way it does this reveals something about your own restlessness that no self-help book has ever quite named. Here's the part most people never learn in school. A hermit crab cannot simply find any empty shell and relax into it. The shell has to fit. Too small, and its abdomen gets crushed, exposed, vulnerable to predators. Too large, and it becomes a liability, heavy, awkward, impossible to carry quickly across open sand. So the crab is locked into a constant, quiet calculation. Is this shell good enough? Could there be something better nearby? Is it worth the risk of leaving what I have to go find out? Sound familiar? In the 1980s, a Cornell sociologist named Ivan Chase started noticing something odd about hermit crabs. He wasn't a marine biologist. He studied human housing markets, how families move, how apartments become available, how one person's move creates an opening for the next person and the next. Chase realized hermit crabs do exactly this. He called it a vacancy chain. Here's how it works. A single new shell washes up on the beach, empty, unclaimed, slightly larger than what the biggest crab nearby is currently wearing. That crab abandons its old shell and claims the new one. But now its old shell is empty. A slightly smaller crab, waiting nearby, claims that one. Its old shell opens up next. Then the next crab moves in. Then the next. One vacancy triggers a cascade. Crab after crab shifting up the ladder, each one leaving behind exactly the size that the next crab in line has been waiting for. It looks almost choreographed. It isn't. No crab is coordinating with any other. Each one is simply watching, waiting, reacting to opportunity the moment it appears. Marine biologist Randi Rotjan documented this behavior with remarkable precision. She found that hermit crabs will actually gather around a single new shell, forming an orderly line by size, largest to smallest, and wait. They wait for the first crab to make its move, because that first move is the one that unlocks everything after it. Rotjan called these synchronized vacancy chains, and she found they could involve a dozen crabs or more, all queued up around one piece of unclaimed real estate, patient, watchful, ready. Now think about your own life for a second. Think about the last time you upgraded anything. A job, an apartment, a relationship even. Did it happen because your old situation became truly unbearable? Or did it happen because something better appeared and suddenly your current situation, which felt fine yesterday, felt small today? That's not weakness. That's not ingratitude. That's the same mechanism running in your nervous system that runs in a hermit crab's. Your brain is not built to evaluate your circumstances in isolation. It's built to evaluate them in comparison. Psychologists call this concept relative deprivation, an idea studied extensively by Faye Crosby in the late 1970s. Crosby found that people don't feel dissatisfied because their situation is objectively bad. They feel dissatisfied when they can see or imagine a better alternative that feels reachable. The moment a bigger shell appears on the horizon, your old shell starts to feel cramped, even if nothing about it has actually changed. This is why the new apartment stopped feeling exciting so fast. It's not that the apartment failed you, it's that your brain, like the hermit crabs, is wired to keep scanning the horizon for the next shell, the next size up, the next slightly better fit. Contentment was never the default setting. Scanning was. But here's where the story gets darker and stranger and a lot more relevant to you. Dartmouth researcher Mark Laidre has spent years studying land hermit crabs, and he discovered something the beach version of this story leaves out. Shells are not always found. Sometimes they're taken. Laidre documented brutal, violent evictions where a hermit crab without a good shell will physically attack another crab, banging on its shell over and over, rocking it, terrorizing it, until the occupant panics and abandons its home. Then the attacker simply climbs in. Laidre's research revealed something even more unsettling. Because empty, perfectly sized shells are so rare in some hermit crab environments, entire populations end up living in shells that are damaged, cracked, poorly fitted, simply because the good ones are gone, hoarded, fought over, monopolized by whoever got there first or fought hardest. Laidre argued that shell scarcity alone can shrink or shrivel an entire hermit crab population over time, not because of predators, not because of food, but because there simply aren't enough good homes to go around. Does that sound like anything you've read in the news lately? You already sense this, even if you've never phrased it this way. Somewhere in your mind is a live, constantly updating map of what good enough looks like, and that map moves whenever the world around you moves. Rising costs, disappearing availability, other people fighting harder for the same limited things. Your nervous system doesn't process that as background noise. It processes it as threat. The same threat a hermit crab feels when a bigger, more aggressive crab starts banging on its shell. That gnawing feeling that you should be doing better, settling into something more permanent, arriving somewhere and finally exhaling? It isn't a personal failure. It's an ancient survival algorithm built over millions of years for a hard-shelled ocean creature, now running quietly inside a soft, unarmored primate scrolling apartment listings at midnight. And here's the twist that almost nobody expects. Vacancy chains, the ones Ivan Chase first mapped in the 1980s, only work because no single crab hoards more than it needs. A crab that outgrows its shell has to let it go for the chain to continue. If even one crab in that chain refused to move on, clung to a shell it had already outgrown out of pure anxiety, the entire cascade downstream would freeze. Every smaller crab waiting in line would stay stuck exactly where it was. That's the part worth sitting with. Your own reluctance to move forward, whether it's leaving a job, ending something familiar, or simply admitting that a chapter is over, doesn't just cost you. It can quietly stall the people around you too. The ones waiting for the space, the promotion, the opportunity you're not using but won't release. Hermit crabs never mistake a shell for a home. It's borrowed armor, useful for exactly as long as it fits, and not 1 second longer. There's no shame in outgrowing it. There's no shame in the restlessness that tells you it's time to move. The shame, if there is any, is in staying somewhere out of fear long after you already know it no longer fits, and calling that stillness peace. So the next time you feel that itch, that low hum of dissatisfaction with something that seemed perfectly fine a month ago, don't rush to diagnose yourself as ungrateful or broken or incapable of being happy. You're not malfunctioning. You're running code written for a creature with no armor of its own, endlessly measuring the shell it's in against the shell it could have next. You just moved into a new apartment, and somewhere inside you, a much older, much smaller creature is already checking the size of the next one.